Hey folks, this is Kelani. Welcome back to the Antorus raid guide for normal and heroic. This time we'll be taking down Imonar the Soulhunter. This fight consists of 3 phases and you'll be bouncing back and forth between 2 platforms. During the first phase, Imonar will be casting Shock Lance on your tanks. This applies a stacking debuff, so your tanks should swap around 3 to 4 stacks. He will also throw out some pulse grenades at non-tank targets. These appear as a green swirl on the floor which you will need to dodge. After a short delay, the trap grenades will arm. At this point, if anyone walks into a grenade, they will take a huge amount of damage and anyone within 3 yards will get knocked back. Getting hit by a grenade will also apply a debuff which increases nature damage taken by 50% for 20 seconds. Grenades will also persist for the entire fight, so you may need to clear some out of the way using immunities later on. To make the most of your available room, you'll want to tank the boss near the edge of the platform with your melee stacked up. The ranged and healers should spread loosely around the outside of the platform. The boss will also throw sleep canisters at a few random players which will put them to sleep for 20 seconds. When this debuff is dispelled, it will put any other players to sleep who are within 10 yards of the debuffed player. You get a few seconds notice when you're being targeted by a sleep canister, so you need to run away from your group so you can get dispelled quickly without putting anyone else to sleep. While you're fighting Imonar on a platform, you can't run onto the bridge which connects to the other platform, as the Infernal Rocket's ability will deal a huge amount of stacking fire damage to anyone who tries. When the boss gets to 66% health, he will fly into the air and move over to the other platform. At this point, the Infernal Rockets will stop, so you can give chase across the bridge. The boss will start casting CONFLAGRATION, which needs to be interrupted, but there's a whole bunch of traps along the bridge. Some of these will be the pulse grenades from the first phase, but the green circles on the floor are stasis traps. If anyone runs into them, they will get stunned, but it can be dispelled. If the path is blocked by stasis traps, you can have one player trigger them to clear the trap, dispel that one player, and then your group will have a way through. You need to get your entire raid across to the other platform safely, so you can interrupt the boss's conflagration cast. On heroic mode, you'll also have orbs moving down the bridge which you need to avoid, and the entire raid will also be taking increasing damage over time until the boss is interrupted, so if you don't interrupt him quickly enough, your raid will wipe. When he's interrupted, phase 2 will begin and the Infernal Rockets will prevent you from standing on the bridge once more. If anyone is still on the bridge, they will likely die, so make sure everyone is across before you interrupt. During phase 2, the boss will use different abilities. He will use SEVER on your tanks, which does a large amount of damage and applies a damage over time effect. You'll want to swap this whenever your debuff expires, which is usually around 3 stacks. He will also use Shrapnel Blast, which places mines at the location of several players. When these mines spawn, they deal damage to the entire raid, and if any of the mines are triggered, they will deal a large amount of raid-wide damage. You should handle this in the same way as you handle pulse grenades, just spread out around the edge of the platform so you can make the most of your available space. You will also have to deal with charged blasts. Imonar will summon 2 ships at the side of the room, which will target a random player each and fire a charged blast at their location. These blasts deal damage in a straight line, which leave a damage over time effect on anyone who gets hit. Players who get hit will also get knocked back, so make sure you won't get knocked off the platforms. These blasts do go through all targets, so the targeted players need to move away from the group and make sure the blast won't knock them off the platform. Once you get the boss to 33%, he will fly into the air once again and return to the first platform. You're going to have to deal with all of the traps from the first transition, but there will also be some shrapnel blast traps as well as the new blast wire traps. If you trigger a blast wire trap, the entire raid will take a bunch of damage, so try to avoid them whenever you can. Chances are the bridge is pretty covered in traps, so one player needs to run ahead of the rest and clear the traps which are least deadly. You should clear stasis traps whenever possible, as you can just dispel the stun and keep moving. On heroic, there's going to be fiery orbs coming from Imonar once again, so just make sure everyone makes it across the bridge safe and sound so you can interrupt his conflagration. During phase 3, the boss will use all of the same abilities from phase 1, except they're now empowered. The debuff from Shock Lance will now be permanent, so your tanks should swap every 2 stacks, and your raid will start taking increasing AoE damage. Empowered pulse grenades will now apply a debuff to players, causing them to pulse damage to anyone within 5 yards, and this will also knock them back. These players need to move away from everyone else because knocking someone else into a grenade left over from phase 1 can kill people very easily. You will want to stack your raid in the middle where it's relatively clear and any targets of the empowered pulse grenade should run to the outside. The boss will also use empowered shrapnel blast. Random green swirls will appear on the floor which you need to avoid. If you get hit, you'll take damage and gain a stacking permanent damage over time effect. Because of all the stacking damage in this phase, you will want to save Bloodlust for phase 3 and burn the boss as quickly as possible. And that should be all you need to take down Imonar the Soulhunter on normal and heroic. Make sure to check out all the other boss guides to make sure you're well prepared for anything Antorus can throw at you. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.